Stour is one of the Shetland Islands in Scotland, with a population of under 20 people, some of whom immigrated after an appeal for residence in the 1970s. Located to the west of mainland Shetland and with an area of 828 hectares, Stour is the 8th largest island in Shetland. Erosion of the soft volcanic rocks by the sea has created an extraordinary variety of caves, stacks, arches, blowholes, and cliffs. The island and its surrounding seas harbour diverse populations of wildlife. The west side of the island is a site of special scientific interest, and the seas around the island are a special area of conservation. The island has several Neolithic burial chamber sites, as well as the remains of Duke Hakon's 13th century house dating from the Norse occupation of the island. The population reached 380 or more in the 19th century, when a fishing station was opened at Crabberberry in Westvo. Subsequently there was a steady decline in population, although the numbers have increased from a low of 16 in the 1970s. Today the main settlement on the island is Biggings, just to the east of which is Houseavo, from where the Snolda ferry arrives from its base at Westborough Firth on the Shetland mainland. Crofting, especially sheep rearing, is the mainstay of island life. Numerous shipwrecks have occurred around the coast, and the celebrated poem Dar sang Oda Papa Men by Vagland recalls the drama of the days when Stour was a centre for deep-sea fishing. Geography. Stour is located at the southwestern end of St. Magnus Bay. There are 34 kilometers of rugged coastline which is indented by numerous small embayments and 4 larger voes. Amnavo in the south is the most sheltered anchorage, and the surrounding cliffs contain a natural rock arch. Houseavo to the east is less secluded but is the main harbour for the island and the ferry's embarkation point. Brayholme and Maidenstack guard the harbour entrance to the south. The former is a tidal island and was a leper colony until the 18th century. The latter's name relates to a story from the 14th century. Lord Thorvald Thoresson is said to have constructed the tiny house at its top, whose ruins are still visible, in order to preserve his daughter from men. Unfortunately for his plans, when she left she was found to be pregnant. In another version of the story, she and her fisherman sweetheart successfully eloped. Westvo, the inner part of which is called Roby's Noust, is the main Vo in the north coast, the smaller Cullervo lying immediately to the west. The main settlement on the island today is Biggings, which overlooks Houseavo and is surrounded by land to the east of the hill dike. To the west the island is bisected by a belt of glacial moraine about 1.5 kilometers in length. Much of the rest of the area consists of a shallow stony soil that may be derived from glacial till. There is an almost complete absence of peat on the island, and due to the volcanic rocks the soils are relatively fertile. The lack of peat led to turf scalping for fuel and to bare areas of rock in the interior. The highest point on the island is in the northwest at Verda Field, which rises to 87 meters. Verda is possibly from the Old Norse for heap of stones. List of outliers. In addition to the larger islets mentioned above, there are various other isles and skerries around the coast of Stour. They include Ishastack, Boyna Skerry, Or Skerry, Fogler Skerry, Forwick Home, Galtee Stacks, Home of Melby, Coda Skerry, Lyra Skerry, Skerries of Quidanis, Skerry of Lamberness, Sula Stack, Swat Skerry, The Horn, Tipton Skerry and Wilma Skerry. The VE skerries lie 5 kilometers to the northwest. They include Helia Goblo, North Skerry, Ormal, Reveruck and the Club. In between Stour and VE skerries lies the shallow bank of Stour. On the 21st of June 2008, Stuart Hill, the owner and only resident of the 1-hectare island of Forwick Home, made a declaration of dependence, creating the Crown Dependency of Forwick. on the basis of a marriage arrangement between King Christian of Norway and King James III of Scotland that dates to 1468. Hill argued that the island should be considered a British Crown dependency, and thus not a part of the United Kingdom or of the European Union. This claim was not recognised by the United Kingdom. Geology. The island is composed of a variety of volcanic and sedimentary rock formations from the Devonian period. At the time, the Scottish landmass formed part of the Old Red Sandstone continent and lay some 10 to 25 degrees south of the equator. The accumulations of Old Red Sandstone, laid down from 408 to 370 million years ago, were created as earlier Silurian rocks, uplifted by the formation of Pangaea, eroded and then were deposited into river deltas. The freshwater Lake Orcadie existed on the edges of the eroding mountains, stretching from Shetland to the southern Moray Firth. The structure of Papa Stour is largely made up of ashes and lavas from volcanic activity associated with this period, including bands of solidified volcanic ash and lava, but there is also a Devonian fish bed at Lamber Banks. There are numerous large boulders deposited by Pleistocene glaciation. Erosion of the soft volcanic rocks by the sea has created an extraordinary variety of caves, stacks, arches, blowholes, cliffs, voes and geodes that are amongst the finest in Britain. The Hollow Body is a cave that passes right through the northwest tip of the island. It is nearly half a mile long and wide enough to row through. Kirstone Hole in the southwest is another spectacular cave, part of the roof of which collapsed in 1981. Yet another is Francis Hole, close to Hamnavoe in the west. This was the favourite of John Tudor, who wrote of the island in his Victorian memoirs and described the cave as ... in fairyland. So exquisite is the colouring of the roof and sides, and so pellucid is the water. Alcoves are recesses like stalls in a church. In 1953 the spectacular headland Dahornopa Part fell into the sea during a storm. The nearby islet of Brayholme also has caves that can be accessed by small boats when conditions permit. Ecology. Otters, grey seals, killer whales and harbour porpoises are frequently seen on and around Papa Stour. Atlantic puffin, Arctic and common tern, bonk sea in Arctic skeward, northern fulmar, common guillemot, razorbill, gull-ewe, wheatear, ringed plover and great black-backed gull all breed on the island, and numerous migratory species have been recorded. There is a profusion of wildflowers, including mountain everlasting, spring squirrel and eyebright, as well as the ubiquitous heather. The west side of the island is a site of special scientific interest, and the seas around Papa Stour are a special area of conservation. The traditional Shetland pony is still bred. History and archaeology. Human settlement of the island dates from circa 3000 BC, and there are remains of several Neolithic burial chambers known as eel-shaped cairns. Little is known of the pre-Celtic and Celtic eras, but when the Norse arrived it is likely they found a religious settlement, as the name of the island derives from Papi Stora, meaning big island of the Papa, in distinction to Papa Little, some 12 kilometers to the west. Norse period. Papa Stour is the subject of a 1299 manuscript written in Old Norse, which is the oldest surviving document from Shetland. It deals with a dramatic incident in the house of Duke Haakon Magnusson, who was later to become King Haakon V of Norway. There is a circle of stones near the beach at Hausavoe, which are the remains of a ting, or local assembly. This was the scene of a duel fought and won by Lord Thorvald Thoresson, who was accused of corruption in the 1299 document and was later called Dominus de Papi. The remains of Duke Haakon's 13th-century house are still visible near Hausavoe. Scots rule and fishing. In 1469 Shetland came under nominal Scottish control, although the Norse lairds of Norway kept the Stour estates until the 17th century. In the 16th century, merchants from Bremen and Hamburg were operating a summer trading boot to buy fish from the local fleet. By the 18th century, two Scottish lairds, Thomas Gifford of Buster and Arthur Nicholson of Lerwick, owned the island. They maintained a prosperous HAAF fishing industry, undertaken in the summer months using six-oared boats known as sixarenes. In addition to the leper colony on Brayholme, there may have been another at Nilfanion overlooking Hamnavo. A recent archaeological survey was inconclusive but suggests the site may be much older than the supposed 18th century colony. The island church, which overlooks Kirk Sand in the Bay of Warwick, was founded in 1806. 300 metres from the present church there may be an older chapel site of Sneans of Snowyans on the headland between the west end of Kirk Sand and the Bay of Tusselby. It is called the Ald Kirk by locals and referred to by the Ordnance Survey as the site of a Romish chapel belonging to about the 12th century. There is a tradition that the work there was interfered with by supernatural powers and that each day's work on the building was destroyed during the night. Eventually the cornerstones were moved overnight by these unearthly agencies to the present site of the church and work was recommenced there, successfully. Excavations in 2004 found little besides large blocks of rhyolite on a piece of whalebone rib, suggesting that the oral tradition may have some truth to it. In the 19th century, the Crabberberry fishing station in Westvo was opened and the island had a population of 360 people or more. However, fuel shortages and a decline in fishing due to the introduction of steam drifters saw a fall in population from the 1870s on. At this time another duel entered the history of Stour. Edwin Lindsay, an Indian Army officer and the son of the 6th Earl of Balcarres, was declared insane and sent to the island in disgrace after refusing to fight in one. He spent 26 years as a prisoner before the Quaker preacher Catherine Watson arranged for his release in 1835. Lindsay as well as a spring at the south of the island where he was allowed to bathe. There are good examples of horizontal water mills, also known as Noorderklout mills, around Dutch Lock. Originally these were two-story buildings with turf roofs, built in two banks to give access to the upper floor where the millstone was sited. Inside the building there was a fixed lower millstone, and a rotating upper millstone driven by the water falling onto the paddles below. Some were still in use on Stour in the early years of the 20th century, and there is still a working example of one of these mills on the burn of Clumley, a Trosic in the south mainland of Shetland. 20th and 21st centuries in common with many small Scottish islands. Stour's population peaked in the 19th century and has experienced a significant decline since then. By 1970 the island school had closed and the population had declined to 16 fairly elderly residents, but an advertisement in Exchange and Mart reversed the decline. A croft and 5 sheep were offered free of charge to incomers, which brought a flood of applicants. By 1981 the census recorded a population of 33. However, by 2005 the population had fallen to 20 after serious discord between islanders led to several court cases. A number of people left the island and the school closed. By early 2008 the population had dropped to just 9 after a family of 7 left. The 2011 census recorded a usually resident population of 15 during the decade 2011 to 11. Scottish island populations as a whole grew by 4% to 103,702. Overview of population trends. Shipwrecks. The coasts around Stour have claimed numerous wrecks. In Hamnavo, Tipton's Skerry alone has sunk Dutch, French, German and Norwegian ships. The Aberdeen trawler Ben Doran A178, founded on the VE Skerries 3 miles northwest of Stour, on the evening of the 28th of March 1930 while on her way to the village of Scalloway to land her catch. When she grounded, weather conditions were fairly good, but it was not until the following day that a passing trawler saw and reported the wreck. By the time that various rescue attempts were launched by the Coast Guard and local volunteers, weather conditions had deteriorated to the point where it was impossible to approach the Skerries. A request had been made for the Stromness lifeboat from Orkney, only 120 miles away, to launch, but the request was made too late to be of help. All 9 crew perished in the wreck. Only 3 bodies were recovered, that of James Mitchell, which was returned to Aberdeen, and the bodies of J. Cormac and J.R. Inch, which were buried in Scalloway. The cargo ship SS Highcliffe ran aground in fog on Wycombe in February 1940. On this occasion the conditions were clement and only the ship and cargo were lost. In 1967 the Aberdeen trawler Juniper ran aground in Lyra Sound at the bottom of the 60 meters cliffs. The 12-man crew were rescued by the 8th lifeboat, the coxswain being awarded the RNLI Silver Medal for this rescue. Stour's most recent shipwreck occurred on the 9th of December 1977 when the Aberdeen trawler Eleanor Viking A278, skipper Alec Flett, founded on the VE Skerries. The 8th lifeboat came to the scene but was unable to get near enough to rescue the crew because of the sea conditions. At the request of Alec Webster, Coast Guard Station Officer Lerwick, a volunteer crew in a British Airways Sikorsky S-61N helicopter from Sombra Airport was scrambled. They managed to winch all the boat's crew to safety within hours of the grounding, despite the storm force winds. The helicopter crew later received a number of awards for bravery. There was no loss of life, but this incident prompted the building of a lighthouse on the Skerries in 1979, and may also have been the example required for the formation of the present search and rescue helicopter unit based at Sombra Airport. Economy and AMP transport. Crofting is the mainstay of island life. Sheep form the backbone of the agricultural economy, but a diversity livestock are kept, including cattle, pigs, goats, chickens, ducks and geese. Vegetable are grown too, are often in the shelter of circular walls, such plots being known as plantee scrubs. Fishing is still conducted but on a relatively small scale. There is a post office at the pier, but no shop. Maine's electricity only came to the island at the close of the 20th century. The Stour project is a Christian-supported housing service offering accommodation to men with drug and alcohol issues. Ferries now sail across the Sound of Stour to Westborough Firth on the Shetland mainland. The crossing takes 45 minutes, and although the Snolder carries cars, there is only one short road on the island. For visiting yachts, the 4 main voes provide good shelter, but the strong tides in both the Sound of Stour and to the northwest require considerable care. Airstrip. There is an airstrip which caters for regular flights from Tingwall. Culture and the arts. The Stour sword dance may be of Norse origin and bears similarities to the long sword dance of the northeast of England. A description of the dance appears in The Pirate by Sir Walter Scott. The writer and journalist John Sands lived on Stour and Fowler for a while during the late 19th century. The writer, folklorist and musician George P. S. Peterson was brought up on Stour. It is also the papa of Vagleland's poem Dar sang o dar papa men, now adopted as part of the folk song tradition as set to music by T.M.Y. Manson. The insistent chorus chant, Rowan Fowler Doon, is particularly striking.
Udba was da horno papa, rowan fowler dune, owir a hidden piece o' water, rowan fowler dune. Rune da bo da tide lumps maken, sunlick trower da cludes is bracken, we man gen war fishes taken, rowan fowler dune. Quote, rowan fowler dune refers to the fishermen's practice of rowing their open fishing boat out to sea until the high cliffs of Fowler were no longer visible. This entailed the boat being some 96 kilometers west of Papa Stour. The tide lumps are increased swells of unusual size due to the combined action of wind against tide. The resonant final image of the piece is of the fisherman being led back home to Papa by the cento floors across the water. This is an example of Vagleland's ability to create a vivid sensual impression of a situation. An extra layer of meaning is added by the knowledge that Da Horno Papa collapsed in a storm around the time of this poem's composition, so that it is a tribute not just to a lost way of life, but a noted geographical feature.